Okay, it's now 10:02. We're going to call the meeting to order. Notice of the meeting was properly posted on August 12th, 2024. We'll start with the approval of minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Second. There. Okay. Let's just Okay, we are going to strike number 2 since we didn't have any nominations for employees of the month.
Motion to strike.
I want to
Second.
encourage everyone to nominate your fellow coworkers. Number 3 is discussion and possible action regarding update to.
We need to vote on the
strike. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Are you?
Hi, Lisa.
Yeah.
Glad you're here. I like that you sit up here with us. We good?
Three.
Ready? Okay. Number 3 is discussion and possible action regarding an update to our postal evidencing system, our postage meter. And Kelly Thomas has been having communications with the Postal Service and the vendor that they're our previous vendor and who they want us to use. And so she was going to come provide some guidance on those conversations.
The only difference is the post office now wants to be the ones in charge of all of the machines. If they do not have the certain imprint on it by December 31st, it won't go through the mill. They will deny it. And he sent me quotes for 2. Right now we pay $14.28 a year. And the 2 that he sent me is one is $131.95 and $152.95. The only difference between the 2 machines is that the higher one keeps better track of the accounting part of it. We don't charge anyone for the postage under the BOCC. So we could go with the cheaper one, less expensive.
When we had our conversation, just to know, because I thought it was good information, the difference between the Insight i4 and the Vision i4 was annually $252, but they actually recommended the more expensive one, the Vision i4, because it had better programming for us to be able to identify the cost of postage per department.
Yes, it has the accounting software that we use now. It's pretty much like the one, except that it will have the different coding on it on the imprint that the post office will accept it now.
I think that's important for us to be able to track what department is using what postage and that kind of stuff. So I think that
since
$200.
we put codes on it and everybody has to put in their code for their department, our postage has dropped drastically.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I think I would go with their recommendation of making sure that we have the proper programming. And then another thing, when I asked Kelly in regards to time frame, really we need to do this as soon as possible, even though, the deadline for the machine is December, because they're transitioning. And so there won't be proper updates available for our current machine. And so we would need to discuss when we want to make that transition.
Now? What was that number again?
We pay $14.28 a year.
$1,428. And the new one will be $1,835. So it's a difference of $252. Do you have that in your budget?
It's in the general budget, and I have a cushion in it. Yes, that will cover it.
Okay, then I say go forth and prosper.
Okay, I have a second.
I'll second.
On the higher amount that will have the appropriate accounting software built into it.
Okay, all in favor?
The 1850.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
None opposed? That passes. For the Vision I-4 to be handled as soon as possible. Okay, number 4 is discussion and possible action regarding the district attorney's need for additional space. And so Ms. Bahana and myself have been on a journey to look for additional space. So far, there's 11 offices needed, and I invited Ms. Bahana and Brooke here today in order to speak on behalf. So space for interns, space for additional attorneys that will be joining us, and just to talk a little bit about what I have done with Ms. Bahana, we have looked at leadership for additional space. We toured all of the floors, and then we also took into consideration whether or not she could occupy the entire 9th floor, since the victim's witness center is also there, and then those court services rooms. But the issue is that we do not have air conditioning where court services or where District 2 offices, and so really it's a difficult space to work, and we would need additional renovations if we repaired or purchased a new HVAC. It could be up to $1 million. And even if you did transition in there and we repaired that HVAC with possible ARPA funds, just to throw it out there, we would all still need to relocate in order to be able to occupy that space. And so with lots of discussion, really our office has determined, since the need is great and you need those spaces by October, but really we're in favor of using ARPA dollars in order to be able to provide the additional space needed. And then, do you have anything else to add in regards to?
Well, I
future
want to
growth?
say, first of all, thank you to the commissioners in particular for moving us to leadership. Obviously, we needed more space. We'd outgrown the 5th floor for some time. And so we do have additional space there, and I'm very appreciative of that. Many of our lawyers are not used to working in cubicles. They were kind of fussing about that at first, but it's all working fine. Because the DA's office was down when I took over, I think that last year of Mr. Prater's tenure, people were starting to leave. Certainly between the election and when I took office in January of 2023, the office lost, I mean, I don't know how many people, but a lot. And so we've been working to try to replace that. Obviously, the cases don't go down. As I started communicating with Ms. Clayton, last year alone, we filed over 5,000 felony cases and almost that many misdemeanor cases. You all know our diversion courts are growing. I have one position in diversion right now that I need to fill. We had to fill a civil position. We still have that open. I think that person will come on in October. I've added 2 lawyers with a grant from the Oklahoma Department of Mental Health to do that early assessment, early release piece, to try to identify people that can either get out on a team bond or people that are mentally ill or have substance abuse issues that we can divert to other processes and programs that will be more beneficial to them than sitting in the county jail. So the office is growing. We are about up to the strength that the office should have been. But as I said, our cases are not going down. As you all know, when I took office, we had 240 homicide cases dating back to 2017. We're now down to 147 homicide cases. That's still a lot. We've had 56 homicides since January to today's date, just this year alone. So I say all that, and as Ms. Clayton and I started talking, I wanted to look at the number of caseload that each of our lawyers were handling. These are very young lawyers, usually less than 5 years experience. They come to the DA's office right out of law school. We train them in the misdemeanor team for a while, and then they progress to more either general felonies or our specialty teams, which are domestic violence or SVU, which is crimes against children and rapes, or they go to a homicide squad. We're creating, because Oklahoma County now has obviously a gun, drug, and violent crime issue. We're creating that task force or that team here in August when our lawyers come back from taking the bar. But saying all that, I started looking at the numbers of cases our lawyers are handling. I have over 11 lawyers, young lawyers, that have over 350 cases apiece. Many of them have well over 200 cases apiece. That's far too many cases for one lawyer to handle appropriately. I have one lawyer in my office that has 611 cases. I mean, that's crazy. 420 cases for one lawyer, 430 for another. I tell you all that because the DA's office, we talked about this originally, is not going to get smaller. I just met with a representative, and I'll be talking to more about trying to get resources for Oklahoma County to add more lawyers. Our caseload is just not going down. So laying that groundwork, so you understand where I'm coming from, I began having conversations with Ms. Clayton about additional space. We're almost to capacity in leadership. We've added 8 cubicles just since we took over in November to accommodate new hires. We have new lawyers that are going to come on. We had 8 lawyers that are coming back from taking the bar exam. As I said, we're going to continue to grow. So I talked to Ms. Clayton about the possibility of having another half floor or some place where we could have somewhere from 11 to maybe 17 offices and cubicle space. I mean, the lawyers are getting used to working in cubicles where we can put staff, because I don't have any more room in the DA's office on the 7th floor to put people. And so that began this discussion that Ms. Clayton relayed to you all about looking at leadership, about maybe possibly looking at the 9th floor. Look, I appreciate what the commissioners are doing in refurbishing the ICB building for us. That will give us room for everybody and room to grow. So I don't want to be ungrateful. I'm very grateful for that. But in the interim, in this 18-month, 2-year interim, I have to have spaces for lawyers to sit and to work. And as I said, our numbers are not going down. So with that backdrop, I don't know if there are any questions additional.
So Keith also joined us for the tour, and so the cost per foot, and correct me if I'm wrong, Keith, is $17 per foot, and you were estimating 10,000 square feet would accommodate 11 to, what did you recommend, 17 off additional cubicles or office spaces?
The rental price per square foot at Leadership is $17 a foot per year.
Mm-hmm.
For the district attorney's offices to grow, there's been a window of what she has now and forecasting how many people additionally they'll need to have. Leadership has agreed to rent or make available sections of floors. So an entire floor doesn't have to be secured now. The estimate is 5,000 square feet. So a 10,000 square foot number when you're fully staffed is $170,000 annually.
Or 340 for over the 2 years that we anticipate the time frame of building ICB. Now, we looked at opportunities of possibly office space in JJC, and there was none available. We looked at, Keith had reached out.
There's
space available.
Yeah, there's spaces. There are spaces available. JJC currently has the entire ground level floor that's been vacated in anticipation of building courtrooms out there. The design work hasn't begun, obviously. We just recently received an architect's estimate as to what those costs are going to be. That space is available, but it's whether or not the district attorney can use those spaces, whether or not those things fit. It's like giving me a telescope to plunge a toilet. It's really not the tool I need to have, right? So JJC is available. The 9th floor is available. Other rental spaces are available. They all come with their drawbacks. JJC and its distance from the campus here is a problem. The ninth floor, I mean, you know the issues we have there, air conditioning, windows, traffic. We just lost the jail elevator yesterday giving a tour to those people who would be constructing a stairwell on the ninth floor. There will be construction going on there, which is loud. We can't use a an impact wrench or a hammer drill on the top floors without it being heard on the lower floors. That comes with drawbacks. Leadership certainly comes with drawbacks. The costs right up front, you know. They have to travel in the weather to get here. That's a problem, isn't it? No,
I
it's
mean,
not a problem.
Well, it's what we talked about before. It is, our lawyers have dockets twice a day, 9 o'clock in the morning and 1:30. So, they get out of court around noon, maybe a little bit early, maybe a little bit late, and they eat lunch real quick, and then they've got to be back at court at 1:30, and they're there, till 3:30, 4 o'clock, or sometimes much later than that. So, it's what I talked to the commissioners about very early on, and that is making sure that the rental space, when we left the fifth floor, was some in close proximity to the courthouse, just because the amount of time our lawyers are going back and forth. So outside of downtown Oklahoma City would be problematic for the DA's office, just because of the travel back and forth that the lawyers do, or even if they're asked to appear in front of a judge for a hearing or answer a question, they've got to be in close proximity to the courthouse to get there quickly.
Definitely open to other suggestions. That's just the research that we've done, and to try to find a solution by October when she'll be needing this office space. Any other ideas? My initial thought, it'd be really nice to be able to put that 340,000 of ARPA dollars into our existing property on the ninth floor in regards to putting it towards the HVAC system. But it still poses the problem of during that construction, and that's only half of what it's going to cost. It's about $1 million. It's just really not, a feasible option, but really would have liked to put that rent towards one of our properties.
And that makes great sense. But I think you need to disassociate the two. Give those people what they need, and then address the construction issues separately. I mentioned the jail elevator yesterday because when it goes down, the sheriff's deputies have to transport inmates and others, and they'll take one of the passenger cars, which limits to two what's available to get where you need to go in the courthouse. So that's a problem.
Colton, do you have any other suggestions or ideas?
Well, my initial thought was JJC, where not on the first floor though, but the third floor where court services was for a minute. We got that space that could be utilized, but I get what Ms. Behenna's concern is with the time frame. I didn't know if there was an opportunity, but for the judiciary, for instance, when they were talking about needing more courtrooms, I had made the suggestion about building some out there, and through consultation with them, it would work because they could just move their probate and whatnot out there, and it kind of made sense for that. I don't know if you have any contingent of your group that would make sense for. If it doesn't, then it would be problematic making that drive. I mean, I have to make that drive occasionally to go out for issues out at juvenile, and it's not, as the crow flies, it's not very far, but as the vehicle drives, it takes some time. So
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I really do, because it is problematic. I mean, the group, we do have a contingency out there. Obviously, the juvenile unit is out there, and it makes sense, right? It's all contained on that campus, but it would be, I mean, there is not a division in the office that I can think of, and I will think about it, that they would be able to accommodate that. I mean, the homicide squad clearly needs to be down here for prelims, and the general felonies do. Gosh, the misdemeanor lawyers, they cover not just their own misdemeanor dockets, they cover revocations, they cover traffic, they cover all sorts of things where they're down here constantly. So, I mean, I just think it would be problematic to have any contingency of what's left downtown to move back out there.
And you mentioned it while you were explaining your need. One of my concerns was because you are growing and, you know, there's so many opportunities for grants for us to improve our services. I just wanted to make sure that ICB provides enough space for that and that we don't outgrow in the next 2 years, even ICB.
Yeah.
But you felt like, or you said in your statement that there is room at ICB, correct?
Yes, and I think, Brooke can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we added up, there are 19 unaccounted for offices in ICB the way we've laid it out. Is that right? 19.
Okay. I just don't want to make sure we don't
Yes.
outgrow our
Yeah.
our newly renovated space.
Yeah, because what it comes down to at the end of the day, I mean, it's usually always this, it's funding, right? We recognize your need for extra space and others as well. The judiciary, you know, they're,
Right.
you know, needing more courtrooms, and there's talk that they may need more later. And we get all of that, but the problem is how do we fund it, right? And how do we make it happen? It's not a matter of whether we think it's important or not. It's just a matter of how can we make it happen. So I think that's really what the conversation needs to be around here is what is the dollar amount that's needed for the additional space that the district attorney's office is going to need? Is it the full floor, which is $340,000 for a
Right.
2-year period?
That's just
Right.
10,000 square feet. And
Yeah.
so that's half,
Oh,
right?
that's half the floor?
We're-
Okay, you'd said 5,000 square feet and then 10. So,
Their current needs, we've identified as 5,000 square feet. Fully staffed, 10,000 square feet additionally is what they would need. So a total of an additional 10,000 square feet.
okay.
I don't know the rate at which you're employing young lawyers. I don't know how soon you need to office these people. Can they work in cubes? Leadership seems to be working. There have been adjustments made over there. But that is the most, I think, expedient route to take. It may not be the best use of funds. Paying rent, or it's just something you don't do. Rent's what you collect.
Yeah, but if we're gonna pay rent anywhere, I mean, it makes sense, even if you get it a couple dollars a foot cheaper somewhere else, it makes more sense to have them all located together.
Danielle,
So-
do you have something to add?
So we did vet this just from an ARPA perspective, specifically because you guys do have lack of funds otherwise in the county currently. So we did look at this as an extension of the current transition to ICB project, since you guys are already paying rent for the DA's office. And we do believe that increased cost due to the growing employees is an eligible use of the ARPA funds, because it is something that we want to build into that overarching project. As you said, they're not going to outgrow the ICB space. And since they are bringing in new hires, that does ultimately contribute to increased public sector capacity. So we could bundle it together as you're like talking through just options for funding. We have vetted it, and it is an eligible use of ARPA by connecting it through that original project, but of course becomes a policy decision. But wanted to let you guys know that is an option.
Thank you.
And can I just say this? I did take the liberty yesterday afternoon to grab Nikki as I saw her walking down the sidewalk to ask her if there were federal grant money for infrastructure. So I know I kind of dropped that on her. I haven't talked to her more about that, but I mean, I know the county is low on resources and great on need. And so I just wanted to throw that out too, as we're talking about options on how to fund some of this. Maybe there is some infrastructure money available federally to be able to help, at least maybe with some of the things that need to happen with the county courthouse, building out more courtrooms. So I just wanted to throw that out. I don't have an answer for you. I just wanted you to know that I've asked Nikki to look to see if there's some infrastructure money.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, I think it's, I mean, they need what they need and there's space available there. I think it's just a matter of, do we have that ARPA money available?
We do. We have the 1.8 and then additional projects that will close out that will roll over.
Right, but those projects have not closed out yet, so those funds, while they will be available, are not currently available. My question is, because we're talking about a time frame here where they need space pretty quick, what do we have available that could be encumbered and associated with an amended contract with leadership?
Well, looks like
Within a
Danielle
week
has
or
an
two.
answer for us.
Sitting in your 14-15 account. So these are your funds that are not obligated to other projects, and this excludes your community split. So each of you has community split dollars. Sitting in 14-15 right now is $1,915,057.59. So you do have funds in there to do it. Not to throw a wrench into what you guys are working on, I know that there is some additional need in ICB to work through moving kind of records and stuff out of the first floor. So as we're talking about like making that space available for the DA's office or just generally, would be worth thinking about that as well, to kind of put all of the pieces together, go ahead and move those pieces out, pay the rent, and then in 2 years everybody is in there and it is comfortable. Just an additional thing to throw at you.
So I was going to bring that up later, but I believe I've emailed these to you, but I brought a copy. So if someone wants to motion to receive document, and I have one for Sharon. This is the risk assessment that I had us introduce in regards to using the ARPA funds to move the documents. on the
Motion to
bottom.
receive document.
Second.
And so we do have those ARPA funds available, so that way we can move along with this project and make sure, because that was one of our office's concern is to make sure that the ICB building, I can talk, ICB building is complete in time for Ms. Behanna's team to be able to move over there. And if it extends that 2 years, then we're going to be looking at how we're going to pay rent. And so if we don't know how we're going to fund the move of those documents and if it's going to cost roughly, Keith, do you have an estimate of what that cost is going to be? I believe I had heard 100,000, but I don't know if
That's
that's
roughly what it is.
roughly. Then we have those funds available to get this moving along.
And then the other project that we know of right now that we got to find extra funds for is the elevators, right? And that was about $1 million. So $1 million, and then this 340, 440, say 500, we're at 1.5.
Yeah.
So we still have a little bit of a cushion.
Yeah. And then
You
even
do
with-
still have a
even with
cushion.
yours, you have yeah. I had
We gotta vote on our motion.
Oh.
Aye.
So we would have a cushion plus additional money that's going to be coming back from other closeout projects. Yeah. So that'll get us back up to about $750,000.
Yeah.
My question to Danielle was, are these funds at interest currently? And has the BET decided where the interest on these funds are to go?
They're just available funds that we
the-
haven't spent yet.
The interest comes back into county general is where the interest goes. It doesn't go back into this account. The only effect that this kind of stuff has is just like anything else. Once we pay the dollars out, we're no longer accumulating interest off of that. But
I get that, but I mean, if you're earning interest now and it's not accounted for or not taken into consideration, perhaps that's a funding source. If it makes you feel any better.
all of the ARPA interest thus far has been allocated to the construction of the new jail is what Budget Board has allocated those funds for. So.
Any other further discussion?
So we're looking at the 340,000 would be the amount needed to encumber.
Just this year's.
No, but it's ARPA money, and
There's-
we've got to allocate all of these monies by the end of this year. That's what normally I would say, well, if we only need a half a floor right now and they'll hold the other half, then let's go ahead and just do half, and then we'll wait until we have more money roll back in, and then we could always increase it later. But these funds, we have to allocate them by the end of the year. And I would hate to do half a floor now and then, yeah, they have another half a floor available later, but it's on a different floor because they lease the other half of this particular floor. So it would just be better to go ahead and just do it all at once.
I
Yeah,
agree.
I would project out now what you're gonna need over 2 years.
In leadership, the $17 a foot, are they willing to enter into that contract and extend that contract through the end of 2026?
Yes, and they'll hold the rate.
Yes,
Okay.
they were
Is-
great. and
Is
we
the
appreciate
current
them.
lease agreement with them through the end of 2026?
The current
Or is
lease,
it on a fiscal year?
it's a fiscal year, and we have the contract in the DA's office now for renewal.
Okay, I think it probably needs to be through the end of 2026 because of the ARPA regulations.
Yes.
So
think
how much
Mr.
is
Hennepin-
that?
I've been told that we have to do annual contracts, but let me check with Aaron again, because we can't encumber, but maybe it's different. if-
We
if
do, but
ARPA
it's
money.
different because it's ARPA. I struggled accepting this as well whenever I
Yes.
was first told.
You're right.
At least make
Typically,
sure-
it's only a single year contract because of the way you have to encumber the ARPA funds. We've worked with the purchasing department to do through 2026.
And since it's all encumbered up front with the contract, it's not creating a debt because we've already set that money aside. Purchasing's shaking her head, yes. So, we're not creating a debt by going into future fiscal years because we've associated the encumbrance with that contract and it's specifically for ARPA.
Management
So-
at Leadership is constructing a document as a way to move forward into the next fiscal year. So it will recognize that.
Yeah, right now we need it because, I mean, we were told before that we have to have it before the end of this year. That agreement will need to extend and be effective until December 31, 2026.
So Danielle, did we earmark enough funds for 2 years for the DA's rent?
The original amount of money that was going towards DA rent, my previous understanding from coming from the 5th floor after we split those projects out, was there was $1 million specifically allocated to rent.
And then how much is that annual lease agreement?
I do not know. Okay.
It was what?
That's not right. That's not 3,600.
Almost 36,000.
Oh, I was
Oh,
like, that's not
yeah.
right.
36,000 a month
Okay,
is
times 12.
almost 400.
432. And how long have they been in there? How long have we been paying rent over there? Okay. So if
That's
we
right.
set aside $1 million, that may cover the full amount. We may not have to allocate more.
That's 432,000 per year. and
For
then
your
times-
current space.
Right,
times
432.
two, That's 864,000, and we allocated $1 million.
Right.
So 432.
So it's 136,000 left.
24.
Minus the 340.
So 432. No, that 432 won't be enough. Because if it'll be a year this November, 11 of 24, that's 432,000. So then between 11/24 and 11/25, that's going to be another 432,000. And then 11/25 to 11/26 is going to be another 432. So that's going to be 1,296,000 plus a month.
Like, you know,
And I'm trying to process through as you guys are working on it. So that is for the current space that they have. So that would be plus for the 3 years plus the month, you're looking at 1,332,000. But that would not equate for the additional space that they
Right.
still need.
That's, yeah, I had the $1.3 million plus a month, and then this 300,000. So if we had $1 million set aside in the beginning, then we're a little over $300,000 short right now on there.
Yes,
This is gonna go
not
for-
including adding more. Sorry.
If this is gonna go in front of BSOC, do we have to have like a set number we're obligating today or authorizing? Can we just say as needed? We can do the math later afterwards.
I think as
I just
we're
wanna make sure we
allocating
don't
funds, yeah,
overextend ourselves.
right, because if we don't know what we're committing to here, then it makes it difficult for us to look at potential commitments other places with other dollars. I think we need to button it down pretty
It would be
well.
good to have those contracts. We could call it special and then have them work out those contracts. The amounts are. Yeah, because I don't want to over. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to look for it. I can't find it. So.
While we're waiting for that, to touch back base on the ICB, moving costs.
Mhm.
Keith, do we have any other thoughts or ways of how we have planned to fund that? No? Okay. I definitely think we need to move forward with that because I'm concerned that
Well,
That's
that's
what's
gonna
keeping
have
us-
to happen
yeah,
before
that's what's
construction
keeping us
inside
from-
begins in the ICB.
from causing, moving forward with construction.
So based on just a general estimate on rent numbers right now, you're at an excess, including the additional like space for 2 years. You're at an excess over that million of about 672,000. So I would probably round it to 700, honestly, since we're currently ballparking. And so that will leave you still almost $1 million sitting in the ARPA account right now. It's like 1.2 that will be sitting in there because you have 1.9 right now. So there's still funds to do this, and then to also move the books, which is extremely important in order to actually do the construction of the ICB. We do want to make sure that that piece gets taken care of.
Okay, so an allocation of that amount, only 340,000 of that is what should have been not anticipated prior to this meeting, because the other, even though we only allocated $1 million, we still were committed to having them there for that
Right.
duration of time. Now, is there an out on the contract? Because hopefully we can get the construction at ICB done a little bit early. Hopefully the lease doesn't expire on December 31st and your staff is working over the Christmas holiday in 2026, moving boxes back over here. But what a way to ring in the new year. But we may not need all of that funding
And then it can roll back.
for that.
towards the-
Well, at that point, it wouldn't be able to roll back.
It could
It
roll
would
back
depend on
to
how
the
early.
project.
It would depend on how early, because if it was November or December, it would be hard to roll that to anything else because all projects would have to be done by the end of 2026.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
You
into
could probably put it in
2026.
like a food bank. They can probably get doors out,
Yeah.
or like the money out pretty quickly. But yes, you do run into a time constraint. There's some projects that we will leave open that you could
Which-
probably make it work.
and I had talked to Danny about this the other day. We need to be mindful. We were talking a minute ago about closing out projects to bring money back in. We need to be mindful about what contracts and projects we're actually closing out. Because as we move forward, say for instance, we get a contractor that is just gung ho and can get ICB done in a year. I know that's not going to happen, but let's just assume for argument's sake that it does, and that saves us $432,000. Well, that $432,000, we can take that money that was appropriated for this ARPA project and associate it with another approved ARPA project. But if we've closed out those contracts, then we wouldn't be able to do that after December 31, 2024. So we need to be careful about what contracts we're closing out. That way we have some flexibility if we do have situations where we have some savings.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. And we'll talk a little bit more when I go through my report about closeout and the nuances of Cody's exact point, not wanting to close out projects that you could encumber funds into because they have existing contracts. So right now we're only going to close projects that are a reimbursement or the scope of work is completed. But we can get more into that.
so what I'm comfortable doing is, I think, Keith, you guys can all get the contract. You guys can get the contracted leadership, get the dollars both for the new piece and what we were short from the original. Get all of that stuff ironed out to find out whether it's 672,000, 674,000, whatever
Right.
it is. So I'll make a motion that we approve an additional floor lease utilizing ARPA funds for the DA's office at an amount for that additional space, including funding any shortfall from the original space that was leased, $700,000, an amount not to exceed $700,000. That way we don't have to come back here and discuss this again, but when it goes to BOCC, it'll be on for the specific amount, that's 675,000 or whatever it is.
Absolutely.
Is that good?
Dane, are there any issues with technology? Dane? I don't know, he's back there talking, I just want to make sure. Any issues with technology or additional costs for running internet, or just thinking through all the details?
Now, I asked where we were looking to do this, and I'm hearing the fourth floor north tower, which is the same tower. So all we really need to do is connect the two floors, and then they'll go out the same circuit. So cost for us is really pretty minimal. This is kind of not a big deal in our world. We've got a switch ready to go. They're only going to need one because we're only talking 11 and 17. So 48 port switch would be perfect.
So make
Well,
sure before
as
we-
they're,
Couple of access
as they're
points.
working the numbers for the additional amounts needed to complete the current lease through the end of 2026, as well as the additional floor, if there are other expenses associated with this, get those into that. I mean, we got about a $30,000 buffer at the
Yeah,
not to exceed
we won't need
700,000. I
anything
think
here.
we're pretty good.
Yeah.
I thought that was a-
I thought it was too.
I thought
No,
you
we
were
thought it
waving a
was
pack of
cigarettes.
cigarettes. I'm like,
That's what I
Okay.
thought. Like, no,
Right.
thank you.
right.
Well,
So-
we'll just make sure we cover all the costs.
Just get all that in there. I mean, we won't be able to make tomorrow's BOCC for this, but I mean, you have some time. Maybe we can make next Wednesday's BOCC, hopefully, and Baisden can. I mean, you guys already did this over there for a floor,
Right.
so
This is-
it should be really easy to back
This is
into
super
the
simple.
numbers.
This is,
Yeah.
in our world, this is no different than if we were adding a floor here. I don't have to go to Cox and get a circuit. I don't have to go get much, if any, new hardware, probably not. I think we already have switches in stock. My biggest thing is who's gonna run the cable that's necessary to connect the two floors? Is that a leadership thing? Is that our facilities?
Who did it last time?
Well, we didn't have floors to connect last time.
Oh yeah, you were connecting.
Right,
to
we
the outside
were
world.
just taking what was already there.
So all details,
Okay.
Now,
once
I
they
think,
reach out to them
Keith
for
can
the
correct me, but I
contract.
think in the contract for at least that floor, facilities can run us lines on that floor, but I don't know. Obviously, this is a whole new
Mhm.
extension.
Okay.
And I don't really care who does it, doesn't matter to me, but as long as,
Well, I'm
Once that's
sure if
done, then our
leadership
part
does
is-
it, if leadership does it, it's probably built into the lease price. If leadership doesn't do it, then we do it, and it's probably going to be minimal. So
yeah, it's not a
if-
big deal. It
if
just, we
that's
need to know
still
who-
if that's
who's
still
doing
up
it.
in the air, but we should know whether leadership's going to do it or not, because we should have the lease agreement by then, and those provisions should be delineated in the lease agreement if they're running the wiring. If they're not, then let's throw in the amount for what it's going to cost your team to do it, and
Well, our team won't do it. Won't be us.
or
'cause
the
we're not in
facilities
line running
cabling
business.
group. Yeah.
And it sounds like Lisa was mentioning that the previous tenant had those two floors, so they're probably already
Oh, and they
at that
already,
capacity.
line already may be
So
there then.
when we negotiate the rate and the contracts and
Well, if
get
the
all
line's
those put
already-
together
if the
moving
line's
forward,
already there, the line's already there.
we'll
We
just
need
make
to
sure we ask
identify
these questions.
Yeah.
it.
Thank you.
My world just got easier.
Good.
That's the case.
Perfect. All right, well,
Glad
I
I could
will make
accommodate
it,
that.
I will make a motion that we approve an amendment to the previous ARPA project for the DA's office rental space over at Leadership to include the necessary dollars that are required to get that lease agreement through, when I say that lease agreement, the current lease agreement through the end of 2026, as well as adding an additional $340,000 for another floor of Leadership at an amount not to exceed $700,000.
I will second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then we also discuss moving forward with the transfer, the move of the document.
I don't know if we can do that under,
We can do it, I think, since we discussed it.
no, I
as
don't think.
part. No, we can do it under the
We can do it
her
under the program
projects.
report, yeah.
Okay, we'll bring it back up. Okay, wonderful. Number 5, we'll move on. That motion passes. Discussion and possible action regarding policies, processes, procedures, and status reports related to planning, oversight, and administration of Oklahoma County's grant program. Welcome, Nikki.
on, guys.
What?
I've got a couple of documents that I would like to submit to you guys.
Get a motion to receive documents.
Are these attached? Are these the ones that are attached? Okay. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Can you please give a copy of both to the clerk's office? You have, okay.
So I want to start with the Oklahoma County Grants Report. I was asked by Commissioner Davison to give a rundown of all of the grants that Oklahoma County has received since I've been in this position. And when I say receive, monies that we've actually physically gotten into accounts in that are ours. And he wanted a brief description about what each one of those grants would do. And so this is what I gave him, and I just wanted to make sure that all of the districts had the same information that I had given to Commissioner Davidson. And if you guys have any questions about any of these grants, let me know, but we can talk more about them on the Grants Watch list.
Okay, I will say, I like this. Having this
Yes.
information is very helpful. I would request that we keep this as an ongoing document that is updated as new grants come online, or as these dollar amounts change, or as the specifications of the programs might change. Whatever the change may be, I think we need a running document, and then have a running document of the ongoing grants, as well as one for closed out grants. So once the projects are done, we still have a document, so we can go back and look historically at what we've done, and over particular time periods. I think this is a good document.
Will you, my only suggestion is, will you total your amount at the bottom so we can celebrate?
Yeah.
We'll have a quick reference of all the monies that you brought into the county.
After I'd already sent it to him, I was like, I should have just totaled that up, but I thought.
Yeah, you can tweak the concept is what I was saying.
Yeah.
I like having this information.
Okay. Well, then I will keep that going on. If
great
you
work.
guys would like to transition over to the grants watch list, and what I'm doing with this is I'm trying to kind of revamp it as well, and try to provide more of an informative look, like an overall look of the grants watch list. Some of the grants that are on this list, they are annual grants or recurring grants. And I don't feel like the way that they're listed here captures that very well. And so I'm kind of working on that. I'm working on an Excel spreadsheet to kind of make this a little bit more clearer to you guys. And so, but for today, I just wanted to bring a couple of the grants to you guys' attention, unless you have questions about specific ones. Everything is pretty much the same. except the grants that I want to kind of bring to your attention, unless you have questions about any other grants that are on the grants watch list. And so the grants that I would like to bring to your attention today, first would be the Oklahoma County Department of Mental Health, our treatment courts funding that we received. So just so you guys understand, that's on here twice, just simply because we are about to renew our contract and we are about to get our second funding or in the second round of funding. So we will receive the same amount, which is the 2.4. But it's listed on there twice just because it's one of those renewal grants and I haven't situated it perfectly yet. The other grant that I would like a little bit of guidance on is the Oklahoma County opioid abatement grant. And the reason why I'm bringing that to you guys today is because we, as the county, were awarded the AG opioid abatement grant. With that monies, we went through a bidding process to award an OU program that's called PCAP, Parent Child Assistance Program. Through the bidding and awarding, we've gotten to a point with the MOU to where we've gone back and forth with each other a couple of times with some strike throughs that I feel like bring me concern. This particular MOU has gone to the DA a couple of different times. The first time that it went through, it was denied. I spoke with the district attorney and we had conversations about why and what needed to happen. I did those things. OU agreed. OU agreed to those things. We changed the MOU. And as we started going through more discussions about, you know, what our services, what their services are, and what our expectations are, we've kind of hit a crossroads. And what I mean by that is that in all of the MOUs that were sent to them and were approved by the district attorney, it's very specifically outlined that we need a detailed invoice of services rendered. And that's where the problem lies. In every one of the MOUs that I've sent to them, they've stricken through providing a detailed, itemized invoice for services. Um, for me, that raises a red flag based off of, you know, that is just standard operating procedure of the county. And furthermore, the grant itself from the contract between us and the AG stipulates that there must be an invoice that is detailed of services. And so this has kind of been going on for about 2 months now. And I feel as if we've reached a point to where you guys should make a decision whether or not we need to rescind our offer to OU or and use that money somewhere else, or if you guys want to allow them to not provide us a detailed invoice of services.
Well, we've got to follow the guidelines from the AG's office.
Absolutely.
First and foremost.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Secondly, even if they didn't have that requirement, that's a requirement that we
Yeah, it's
that
our
we
best
would have.
practice.
Yeah.
Yes.
So my question is, your discussions with them, has it just been you send the MOU, well, MOU or contract, I don't know what it is that you're utilizing, but you send the document over to them and they're just crossing it out and sending it back to you, and then you make some other revisions and send it back and then they cross that out? Or are you having verbal exchanges about, we have to have this, and they're responding about, well, we can't provide it, or is it just them striking it out?
Both. The first time
So what is their reasoning? Have they given you a reason?
they have, so they said that their programmatic and their financial offices are separate. and that with the program side, listing outcomes, that will be easy because that will be who we contracted with, which is the PCAT. But their financial services and the way that they do their invoicing and billing is much different, and they don't have control over that. And they've said in that department they don't provide a detailed invoice; they provide what services were rendered. And so it sounds like they're going to provide a detailed invoice for services, but in writing, they're saying clearly that they're not.
Okay,
Because they
so
strike it.
I would say look at the AG's requirement and whatever that language says about a detailed invoice or whatever it says, copy that language, include that language in the agreement with OU. And if OU will not agree to that, then our response is, this is a requirement of the grant. It's not only a county requirement in general, but it is a requirement from the AG's office. So if you're not willing to enter into a contract that has the direct provisions from the AG's office, then we're dead in the water. We can't continue to go on.
I think it's important for us to practice our best practices for grants for the county, and then also make sure we're compliant with the AG, and it's our best practice with all of our ARPA funds. I mean, we have given out so much to the community with subrecipient agreements, and this has never been an issue. And so, and this is 200,000, if I remember correctly,
It's almost
300.
almost 300,000. And so, surely that there's a way that they can work within their departments to be able to communicate services offered and be able to add that to the invoice. And so I would say,
And if you need, if she needs help,
yeah, and I,
if you want me to make a phone call, you know, if there's somebody that you've been dealing with and you want somebody else to maybe have a conversation with them, I'm happy to do
Yeah.
that.
and we talked a little bit about this yesterday, and I offered the same. Sometimes it just takes another person to call and mention, you know, that this is a requirement. And then if we're not able to meet this requirement, then unfortunately we may have to rescind the offer. But we really need to figure this out because we want to be able to provide that funding to one of the other very worthy um, uh, organizations or nonprofit organizations that bid. I guess my next question to the committee is if we would have to unfortunately rescind that offer, are we wanting to look at the other contracts that were sent?
I
Or do
think-
we want to reopen it to the community and
I think what we'll need to do is, if we have to go down that road,
then revisit it?
I'm happy to reach out to Terry Simonson at the AG's office. He's been kind of running point on this for them, and ask him his advice on moving forward. Because when we applied for this, they approved our application based upon our partnership with OU. So I don't think we could just take it away from them and then give it to somebody else without letting them know. I'm sure that there's a mechanism that we could move to a different provider, but I don't know if the AG's office is going to be okay with us just moving to somebody else that we've already done, or if we're going to need to do a full solicitation. I just think
Ellen,
we
we
need to.
haven't done the MOU with them yet. I mean, we're working on the MOU, so it's our decision on who receives those funds. But I definitely think
No,
a
no, no,
conversation.
no, no, because the application, if I'm correct, when we applied for this with the AG, it was kind of a,
Is it specific to them?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought
Yes,
we
it
were
was.
awarded it and then we
Uh-uh.
chose. Okay.
No, so
It
that's
was based
why.
off their program. That's what we wrote the response to their bid on.
But we could have been approved if we were using another program.
Right.
as
That's
well.
right.
So that's why I would just want to reach out to Terry and say, hey, we've got the entity that we were anticipating utilizing will not adhere to terms and conditions that not only we put, but you placed on there as well. So we're going to need, we don't want to lose the opportunity to help the community with this abatement grant money. What process do we need to go through to be able to switch entities? Because they've got an abatement board that that reviewed all of those applications
That's
and stuff.
correct.
So I'm sure they've got a mechanism, I'm sure, in case something like this happens.
And I'm sure there's somebody else at OU that's in leadership that we could reach out to and explain to them our situation. And so if you
And that's what and that's why I had offered to make a phone call, because I think it may be that we just need to get to
Understanding.
another level of,
I think it should be escalated just a
Yes.
little bit. I've really tried to work and play well with others on this one. But I personally don't feel good about it. And if I take all of my personal feelings out about it and just look at it logistically in black and white and in process, it's still outside the boundary. So I think that it would be great for someone to kind of explain that to them.
yeah, if you want, just swing by my office. We can call them together.
Okay.
And that way you're on the call and we'll get it handled.
Thank you, Cody. So on that one, thank you for taking care of that one. On this grants list, on the grants report list, I did not get to add to it because I didn't know that we were awarded, but we were awarded another grant amount in the amount of $3,000 for the solid waste program. District 1 asked for chainsaws. As you can see on here, last year we got 1,500. This year we got $3,000. So we got an increase. So that's wonderful. Um,
No, you're Jason.
oh,
We're getting close to Halloween.
Halloween, Jason.
Jason's the machete guy, right?
No, that's
I
the.
don't know.
You're right.
I don't know. Whatever. You got it.
Sorry.
So, just so you guys know, I was able to hear back a little bit about the CPRG grant funding, which was the funding that we were going to use towards the new jail campus. No one in Oklahoma was awarded that funding this time around. So, not RCOG, not the state entity, and nor the NCOG. So, no one in the state of Oklahoma was awarded CPRG money this year. So I am currently looking for other funding, any type of climate reduction, any type of pollution reduction, any type of infrastructure. As you know, that's a need for the county, any type of capital project funding. I am really working hard to try to find some funding that will fit our needs. And that was it on the grants watch list, unless you guys have any specific questions for me.
I wanted to ask about the energy conservation plan. That one, how's that going? I didn't been in. I know I was supposed to be in a meeting a couple weeks ago. I didn't end up making it,
Nope.
but I just was curious.
So it's going well. So we did get an estimate from HOK for them to do a energy conservation plan for us. They wanted a little bit more than what Keith wanted, and I found a template of a energy conservation plan. After review, I feel fairly confident that I and Eric and will have a lot of technical assistance with that funding. So they'll hold our hand through it, but I just got to get something on paper.
Yeah.
And so I was able to get an OG&E contact. So I'll reach out to OG&E. We'll get
Clear
together.
Results, is that like the company Clear Results? Is that
The actual OG&E,
Okay.
like an OG&E contractor.
Yeah.
So you and I will get with them. I'll set up a time.
Okay.
We'll get together. We'll go and walk, the areas that we're kind of thinking about, where we want a baseline for the study. I think it should be all of the county buildings to have a baseline on those, just because we're doing a study. I think it would just be good as we look at trends for the county on what we're doing and how we're saving money. But we really need a baseline of all of our buildings, and so I'm working on that. But we're going to need a little bit more time on that. I really need to dial in the charging systems that are already existing. So just a
Okay.
little bit of work to do on it. Lastly, I would like to talk to you guys about a couple of memberships that I would like to have and a couple of trainings that I would like to go to. So, the first is I would like to be a part of the Grants Professional Association. Is $240 a year for me to be able to be an active member of this Grants Professional Association. What it also does is it allows me a discounted price to attend their grant writing professionals conferences that they have. It's a summit, and they have them twice a year. The summit that they have coming up, it's in October. I would like to attend that if we have the funding for it. But and if I do an early bird special and I apply for the membership at the same time, I can get them both for $750. I believe it is. It's $750 and some change. And they give me like a discount for the membership and they give me a discount for the early bird sign up for this conference that's in Colorado. So it's a 3-day conference. Eventually, my goal with the Grants Professional Association is that I want to be an active member. I want to be a part of their board. I want to, try to be a part of their policy committee so that I can learn much more about grants and policy and implementation and all of the good things that I need to learn to just be a better employee and a better grants professional in general. I was recently appointed as a requisitioner. And with that, you are supposed to attend a training within the year of that appointment. And so, with the help of purchasing, I was able to get a couple of classes and times. And so, I've gone ahead and I've enrolled myself. I've heard that they fill up pretty quickly, but I've enrolled myself in purchasing one and purchasing two. It's a 2-day class that's in Ardmore. They're $65 a piece for both of those classes, which is $130 total that I would like to take. So, if you guys have any questions about any of those items,
Chantel, are those the OSU classes? Okay.
We have it in the budget for her.
I don't know what was in,
I mean, I
mean,
am
the,
such a fan of professional development, and I think that you need to attend all of those, but we also need to account for what it's going to cost for travel
yes,
and hotel stay. And so I think it's down to making sure we have that budgeted.
yeah, I think on the purchasing deal, the Ardmore, that to me is a no-brainer. I mean, you're a requisitioner, you need to do that. And it's Ardmore, it's, I mean, some mileage down, but it's, that's not a big deal. The other one I would want to look more at and see kind of some more of the cost and see what's in the budget. But I think the others that are $65, that should be in the general fund budget, general government budget, which is, or no, I think you're out of commissioner's budget with Kelly now.
yes.
Yeah. So
Yep.
I don't know what's in there for travel and training.
I know that for supplemental, we did ask for this particular training. We asked, I believe, for $5,000 for the training for the conference, that summit, the membership. I think everything was in there: plane ticket, hotel, and I think it came to roughly about $5,000.
Yeah, but I don't think any of that was funded because we did flat budgets.
Uh,
So I don't
okay.
think
To
any of that was
rediscuss
funded.
it in
Yeah.
September.
So get with Kelly and
Okay.
see what's in there because I mean I can look and see in Munis, but there's the commissioner's travel is in there as well. So we need to make sure that there's plenty. If not, we can find $130. I think you said $65
Yes.
twice. We can find $130 and get transferred into there if we need to. But if we don't need to, if there's money in there, I say book that and plan on attending the purchasing classes.
So you want to
Okay.
make a motion for her to attend the purchasing classes?
I don't-
and use
I don't
those
really
funds? You
think
don't think
that
there's any action needed?
It-
Okay.
Yeah, I don't, I
And-
mean, that is a actual, I mean, that is
A
a
requirement.
bona fide
Yeah.
requirement
Yes,
of
sir.
a requisitioning officer. The other stuff is optional.
Yeah.
So I don't think we need anything on that.
So when's the early bird special you mentioned expire? When do you have to register by
By the 31st of this month.
of this month? And then there's another one that happens later in the year.
Next year, in the spring. I believe that one is in April or May. I think that one's usually in April or May. So
Okay. So,
they have two a year, two summits a year.
and then you'll discuss September supplemental next month, and that'll be part of that presentation to determine at that time.
Mhm.
And then we can possibly talk about it in September, P&G, or October, and then you can attend the spring.
Potentially.
Okay. So we'll discuss that further at September supplemental.
Perfect.
But definitely want you to have that opportunity. We just have to make sure we have the budget for it.
Sounds like a plan. Lastly, I would like to discuss perhaps the county having a strategic plan. I know that we have a master plan, right? And that's wonderful. But from my understanding, the master plan for Oklahoma County is for unincorporated Oklahoma County and its growth. I feel like we might need something a little bit different for our goals that we're trying to reach for Oklahoma County. And whenever I say goals, I'm just talking about just in general, just for one, just for mine. I haven't done an assessment of all of the other departments, but just for me, just with the energy, I feel like just that alone should be something that we want to document and have specific goals that we strive for. I've spoken with Eric about a strategic plan for the county, and he said that that was something that you guys kind of have talked about, but it's never kind of stuck. And I had wanted to see if that was something that we could probably put on the BET watch list. I've kind of talked about some numbers about how much it might potentially cost for the county to have a strategic plan, and we're looking at anywhere from $100,000 to $200,000 to have someone to professionally come in and start doing a strategic plan for us. And I am a very innovative employee, and I am constantly looking towards the future for the county and what we can do. And I feel like a strategic plan would be a tremendous investment and a great leap forward for us as a county, to start just strategically planning some of the things that we want to do other than, you know, capital investments.
I think
Thoughts?
I'm a huge fan of strategic planning. I think eventually it's something that the county should definitely do. But with our budgets being so tight and needing
Yes.
to fund the build of a detention center, that those funds would definitely be better put towards making sure that we're being able to provide a safe detention center and environment for our employees. But on down the road, or if you're able to find grant funding in order to pay for a strategic plan or someone to come in. I know that there might be grant funding out there for that. But I also know from my experience that a strategic plan a lot of times is a requirement when you apply for grants.
Mhm.
They're going to want to know your goals, your measurements,
ma'am.
and so I see where you're going with that. But definitely for $100,000 or $200,000, I feel like that's a future goal.
Yes.
In regards to where we're at right now.
I just wanted to say something on the mic
Well,
about it.
we've talked about this, not this group, but since I've been here, I mean, I've had this conversation at least 100 times with different people. Mr. Barnes is shaking his head.
Shaking
He's
his
heard me
head.
talk about it. But there's problems associated with it. I mean, you talk about goals of the county. If we're just talking about BOCC departments, those goals can change every 2 years
Mhm.
because there's a new election. So, I mean, we've done big studies on whether it's pay studies for pay bands, and you spend all this money, and then as leadership changes, then
Vision changes,
nothing
yeah.
of that is followed through on, and then you've spent a whole bunch of money and it's not implemented at all, period. And I'm getting more head shaking back there from Mr. Barnes. He's seen this, and so while in principle and in theory it's a great idea, and we've talked about it, and I wish that we could get there. I agree with you, now's not the right time. Number one. Number two, hopefully sometime down the road will be, but I don't even know if
Yeah.
that will be the case
Makes
because of.
so much sense with election cycles and new leadership and vision. I mean, it was one of my first things with David Barnes was just trying to put together an emergency management plan, and all the different offices in the county as a whole with all the other different elected
It's been
officials.
hard to get done.
It's been very hard. So I appreciate the
And that's something that the
suggestion.
auditor's office.
Yes, and that's something
And-
we're required to have.
Yeah.
So, and we finally have it thanks to Mr. Barnes over there. But I think it's an amazing thought and something we definitely should strive for. But adding it to BET, I believe it's not the appropriate timing. At this
Nikki, let's talk after this. I have a bunch of documents on that. I've kind of done a deep dive on it. I think the last strategic plan we had was 2004 and has not been updated since. So, yeah, I do think it's vital for us as a whole. So,
Thank you for your consideration.
time. Any further discussion on number 5? Okay, number 6.
So this is a new grant that the sheriff's office was anticipating, and I didn't know that until I sent it over to them. And just with the AG and Christy Ice over there, I think I've built a good relationship with them and was able to receive information regarding this funding. I think pretty much after the legislatures approved it, and the sheriff's office and Andrea over there, they've just been wonderful, and they are ready. They were ready and provided me all of the information that I needed, and are super excited about this opportunity to receive $300,000. And so this is a fairly simple grant, a very simple application, one page. Basically, it takes a resolution from the BOCC accepting this grant, in addition to the signature of the board signing it and the signature of the sheriff signing, and that's pretty much it. And so this is more of that funding that the county will get on an annual basis, that an application is submitted through the county. We will be the lead applicant, and we will essentially pass the money through, or the sheriff's office will be a subrecipient for this funding. And so I asked for approval for it to go to the BOCC and for me to continue to work on the application and get all the information and documents needed to submit the application on September the 6th.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate all your hard work. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Have a great day.
you too.
Number 7 is discussion and possible action regarding policies, processes, procedures, and status report related to planning, oversight, and administration of Oklahoma County's ARPA funding allocation. Danielle.
Alrighty. I'm going to move kind of quick through it since you guys have already been here for a little while. It's a little bit of a longer report than usual because we did want to update you guys on some of the highlights from the annual report. So if I start talking too fast, just flag me down, but we'll try and move through it relatively quickly. I am going to highlight 2 different set of funding numbers. So the important thing to know about this specific set of numbers is this is where we're currently at based on the numbers that we have in Munis that are projected through the 14th, which is tomorrow. And when I talk about the annual report, those numbers only go through the end of June. So that's why there's going to be a discrepancy. Both are correct. They're just 2 different points in time. So currently, your total number of approved projects has not changed. That is going to jump substantially tomorrow. You guys have several of your subrecipients getting the initial authorizations on BOCC tomorrow. So by the time it's all said and done between all 3 districts, there's going to be about 30 new subrecipients. So we'll see that project number increase after that. So the authorizations tomorrow are just kind of putting an earmark on those funds, but it is not your subrecipient agreements that are being passed, because we'll need to go back to all the organizations and collect their detailed budget, their timelines, do the risk assessment, do the subrecipient beneficiary checklist. But this lets them know that they're receiving funds. Of your 85 projects, 56 of them are fully expended, which is really exciting. We're seeing that number grow. The last time we were here, it was at 52. So you had 4 more projects that are fully expended. Your unauthorized community funds is 5.2. Again, that's going to change given tomorrow with all of the approvals that will occur at BOCC. So that number is going to decrease. Your authorized amount of overall projects is at 147.8. Again, those are going to increase along with your obligated amount when we get all of the subrecipient agreements in place. And then right now at expended, you have expended about 48% of your total expenditure of your 154 million being that 75.3. So this just kind of gives you an overview of those 85 projects. You do have quite a few that are fully expended. This chart's going to look a little bit different next month because you're going to have a lot of new subrecipients that aren't fully expended yet. But one of the things that we do track with your subrecipients is when funds go out the door from the county and are liquidated to them, that counts as your expenditure. So even as we're tracking with them what their current quarterly expenditures are on the county side, you've done your part and you've issued the funds unless they're a reimbursement subrecipient. So that will increase some of those when they're paid outright. So you've got 56 at 100%. You have 9 projects that are at more than 50% expended, 18 at a little bit less than 50% expended, and then 2 that are not expended at all yet. And that's just because they are newer projects. That takes us into our reporting update. So like I said, these numbers might look a little bit different because it is based on what we submitted in your annual report, and that is for June numbers, so everything through the end of June. As you all know, you guys received 154 million in funds. When we submitted the report since last year, you have had 53 projects that were completed at 100%, which is really excited. So you had a lot of projects with a lot of movement over the past year. And you did obligate 50 million in new projects, leaving only that 7 million unobligated. And when you break that 7 million down, the 5.2 of that is your community split between the 3 offices. And then that 1.9 we were discussing earlier gets you to that 7 million number. So really exciting too, when you think about that, we don't have very much funds that are not obligated yet, which is great. That's always been the goal for this year, is to make sure everything is obligated. So definitely on track with those pieces as well. This just gives you kind of an overview of where you have put funds when it comes to eligibility categories. So within each of your ECs, there's subcategories, of course. So not everything that is in public health is coded the exact same. They're not all necessarily 1.1. There are multiple codes within there, but this breaks down where you're seeing most of your expenditures, and it will be in that public health section is where a substantial part of that is. You've had quite a bit in your public sector capacity as well. So that's including like your infrastructure projects here in the county. And then your negative economic impact is where you're seeing a lot of your community recipients. And so that number is going to increase as well once we get all of your new subrecipients into subrecipient agreements, because they are mostly going to fall into that negative economic impact section. This just breaks down, rather than looking at your eligibility categories, this is breaking it down by entity. So this is something we also highlighted in your annual report. So talking about how much has gone to your community, how much has gone to your individual organizations, PBA, and things like that. So obviously a substantial amount has gone to the BOCC. A big part of that, the reason that number looks so large, is because it's accounting for your mental and behavioral health facility, which ultimately has a greater impact than just for the BOCC. But that number sits at 60 million because 40 million of that is specifically for your mental health facility. So that's why that looks a little bit larger, but the overarching goal of that, of course, being a positive community impact. So we did show you this slide the last time. This kind of breaks down your different sections of the annual report. So we go through, as I was showing you those ECs, and you can see where you're kind of been putting your funding. Each project that is underneath any of those, so anything that's in public health will be under that public health section, and so on. And it highlights all of the projects. It shows how much has been expended on those projects, and it also tracks all of the key performance indicators in those projects. And if anyone ever has downtime and really wants to read a 200-page report for any reason, it is hosted on the Oklahoma County website, so you can see it at any point in time. Overarching, there's about 14 sections in the report. As I just said, it's very long, almost 200 pages. And so you do go from your very basic executive summary all the way through your updates on individual project inventory. So that's where I was talking about. That's where you get your KPIs, your expenditure amounts, and things like that. We have also gone into detail talking about your community engagement activities. We highlight the ripple mapping workshop that we did. And then, of course, tracking things like your labor practices. So in Oklahoma County, all of your infrastructure projects are being paid at a higher rate, which is a positive thing. And we are tracking all of the certificates of labor for when you get into your mental health facility one. Anything over $10 million has additional tracking. So the owner rep does all of that as well and provides that information. So we highlight those pieces as well, just kind of giving everybody a green light on the positive things that Oklahoma County is doing. This is your kind of overview of year-to-date funds. So when we look at those EC categories we were talking about at the beginning, you guys had funded things in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. There hasn't been a massive change from 2023 to 2024, but did want to highlight some of those notable changes. So you have had a reduction in your authorized amount for your public health. And that's because you had a reduction in your project. So that has partly to do with like your HVAC project being moved to revenue replacement. It gets reported differently in the Treasury portal. So for those accounting principles, you're seeing that number went down, but it's just because it's been put into a different place. So you'll see under EC6 that has increased. And then you had an increase in your public sector capacity and in your negative economic impact section as well. And those were highlighted because of your Edmond Mobile Meals project that was added compared to last year, increased your negative economic impact section. And then the Luther Fire had some additional funds towards their fire truck. And then your Vigilon project in the detention center was recoded. And so that moved into section 3 as well. But no massive changes, but lots of completion compared to last year, which is great. We did want to highlight the altered projects in comparison from year to year. This is also in the report, so it's always highlighted for anybody to look at, showing that revenue replacement for the jail was reduced originally from that $10 million to the 4.5 because we did move those funds to go towards the HVAC so that those get tracked. We did increase the amount to the transportation and operations vehicles at JJC. So that came from when we closed out their COVID testing project, which is right underneath. That was canceled, and a portion of those funds was moved into the transportation so that they could purchase their third vehicle, and the funds that were in excess of what they would need all ran back into your 14-15 account. And then just some small changes on things like the names of how we have projects coded. So originally your Annex 4th floor remodel was what is now your 5th floor remodel. So we've updated that naming, and it's just the court clerk social distancing project rather than the floor specifically. And then you see that as well with the jury assembly room. That was originally the jury pavilion, and we'll talk more about that one in a little bit. But given the constraints of actually doing the work in the alleyway, it is something would be considered indoor now, and so we have just changed the name on that. And then you'll see we're tracking as well those increases on some of your projects as they've gotten change orders and those different pieces that may have needed increases. So just wanted to make sure that everybody knew those things are well accounted for and again are in the report. The fun part is talking a little bit about how the community is being impacted and the positive KPIs that are coming out. So I know this is very dense. It's very hard to see. There's 49 total projects on there. But of your 85 projects, these 49 are required to report on which of the communities they are most impacting, specifically your disadvantaged communities. And so we broke down kind of where you're seeing a lot of these. A lot of your projects in that 49 are going to fall into general public. So it is your social distancing projects. It is your enhancements to your dense work sites. So ultimately, yes, that enhances durability for your employees, but it is better for the general public as well while they're getting their services. So of those projects, you have 18 that are impacting your general public. You have 2 that are specifically related to nonprofits that experience negative economic impacts. You have one project that was a nonprofit operating in a qualified census tract, and you're going to see, I think, a little bit more of that in our second round of funding as well. There's quite a few more in QTCs. Very specifically, you have one of your projects that's targeting young children in Oklahoma, anywhere between 2 and 17. So that's going to be the care center that's working on those services. And then you have projects working towards your seniors and disabled individuals. And then we have low and moderate income households as well. Other sections that we're looking at as highly impacted are your disproportionately impacted low income households and communities. You have 10 projects that are reporting that that's kind of their main service area. And then we have disproportionately impacted households and populations residing in QTCs. So they are kind of coded in a little bit different ways. You do as well have disproportionately impacted households that qualify for certain federal benefits. So these three all kind of go together, but someone can fall into a different category depending on where they reside or what services they would need. And then you have several projects that are working towards increasing your food and housing security, and then your aid to impacted industries. So this is going to be things like your state fair, the First Americans Museum, that are really targeting towards tourism and hospitality. And then you have several projects that are really focused on ensuring the safety and health of your detainees and the employees in those facilities as well. So that walks us through talking about your impacted communities. And then the next thing, of your 85 projects, there are 22 that are required to report use of evidence. So this is how much of your allocation are you using towards evidence-based interventions. You're allowed to report 0. That's fine. Your project does not have to be using evidence-based intervention. So not all of these have an amount going towards it, and that is completely okay. But several of them do. And so we wanted to highlight 5 of the really exciting ones. So you have almost $3 million in just these projects that have been going towards your evidence-based interventions. The first one is Remerge of Oklahoma County. So they have been working towards providing services to individuals for wraparound services of its mothers and families. So they have a 4-phase program, and it lasts anywhere between 20 to 24 months. And upon entry into these programs, each of the participant completes an individualized treatment plan, and then they're kind of set up for more success into the future. So of their project, they're spending nearly or a little over $450,000 in total evidence-based interventions, and they have been able to provide 38 job training programs to individuals, which is really exciting. And then when we look at Restore OKC, they have created the market at East Point, and that kind of came together in 2021 during the pandemic, and it is in what is considered a food desert. And so they decided, based on doing one of their studies, that that was the specific area based on zip code that there was the highest need in the county for services. So over the past year, they have been able to serve more than 5,000 households, which is really exciting. You also have the regional food bank. That kind of speaks for itself. They're providing food to your community. They've been able to serve 56,000 people. Your home finance authority has created 237 affordable housing units, which is really exciting. And that's kind of to Cody's point earlier, a project that we'll want to leave open in case you have something that rolls back, because that's something that they can continue to fund. And then your Northeast Oklahoma Renaissance, they are also aiming towards affordable housing, and they have had 2 affordable housing units that they have maintained. The difference in what they're doing versus what the Home Finance Authority is doing is the Home Finance Authority is on large scale creating affordable housing, and they've partnered with organizations throughout the county and Oklahoma City to do that. Northeast Oklahoma Renaissance is a smaller program, and they work with people on the northeast side of your county, and they specifically do a training program. So they have purchased an older home, and they rehab that facility, and they teach individuals kind of how to do that flipping process, and then they teach them how to go through the process with the banks of asking for loans. How do you work with your subcontractors and contractors? So while that number looks small, that they've only maintained 2 affordable housing units, it's because it's a really comprehensive program that's aimed at multiple pieces.
And I think our Home Finance Authority has kind of helped them on that training program as well, right?
Yep, absolutely. Jared has been very helpful in working with any of the affordable housing individuals, kind of understanding those basic needs. He's for sure the expert on those things, more so than myself. So we very much appreciate him on those efforts. Your other projects that have used a little bit of use of evidence is your deep cleaning at the detention center. That was all based in great need and wanting to make sure that we cleaned COVID out of those facilities. So that was something that you did as well. Your HVAC projects are considered evidence-based interventions as well. That is well laid out by the CDC as a need. And then also your community violence interventions and your telemental health programs are based in evidence as well. So those are really exciting. Not all of your sheriff CVI project is considered an evidence-based intervention because part of that was for purchases of vehicles and radios and things like that that are a necessity for that department. That doesn't necessarily relate back to your evidence-based interventions. And just a couple more projects that we wanted to highlight for everybody is we do have several of your projects are specifically working on enhancing your dense work site. So that's including your court clerk, social distancing. If we move forward with the jury assembly room, your JJC lobby, and then the DA transition to ICB are all making improvements to dense work sites. You do have several projects as well that are based on enhancing your medical and behavioral health facilities. So that's your Edmond urgent care and outpatient clinic, your Griffin Memorial Hospital, and then of course the medical and behavioral health facility that the county will operate. And the reason we're tracking, so these are technically these services at the end of the day do have a positive impact and are based in evidence, but what is occurring with the current dollars is construction. So we're not counting that as an evidence-based intervention dollar spend currently, since the funds are going towards the construction. The eventual services that provided will be allowing people to better space out. You will be having better medical and mental health facility and offerings, but currently what we're tracking with the funds is for the construction. So that's why these in the report will show that there's a $0 amount towards evidence-based intervention, but at the end of the day, there is a positive impact of these projects. These are things that you are used to seeing. This is talking a little bit about our work plan. As you guys know, it is important to get everything obligated by the end of this year. So we are anticipating potential surge work, as we've been talking about, in October in case we need to move funds around, in case we have additional subrecipients, and just getting those last few pieces out the door. So we'll be focused on that. And then as we're bringing in new subrecipients, we're going to start doing some more trainings as well. We'll need to host those initial subrecipient trainings for them and compliance webinars. So we'll bulk up on those trainings for them. Your just general look ahead over the next 2 months. We are in this August space now. So tomorrow you guys will have several of your agreement or initial authorizations on BOCC. We are going to talk a minute about some project closeouts and some reallocation. And then of course, for the next 2 months, we'll be very much focused on the subrecipient contracting side of things. And then we are always doing site visits when we're here. Today, we are doing CHCI and DRTC. And then tomorrow, we have Edmond Mobile Meals. So this is a slide I'm going to continue to show you guys every month while we're here. It's just giving you some real numbers about how far are we away from these obligation deadlines. So December 31st, as of today, is only 140 days away. To give ourselves that buffer of the obligation deadline, we of course want to make sure most everything is in place by the 20th, since everyone's going to go on vacation and going to need some good sleep. So that's only 129 days away. But real preference being that most everything is obligated in November. And so November 1st is only 80 days away. So things are moving along very quickly, and just want to put those into actual numbers for everybody as we talk about getting everything obligated by the end of this year. Again, this is just kind of your overarching work plan from now through December, most of it going to be focused on that obligation deadline. So now we'll talk a little bit about project closures, and we do have individual agenda items to be able to close these projects, but wanted to give everybody some context on them. So this has been your traditional workflow. When you guys initially get your projects, it goes all the way through these stages, you guys, and then to BOCC, everything gets recommended, it gets paid out, and then things get closed. The way that we track closures is different than the way that maybe your owner's rep tracks your closures. So when a project, such as an infrastructure project, has completed its work, they're showing that that is a completed project, which makes sense. We do not show a project is completed until all of the POs are paid. And so when we have somebody do closeout, they have to sign a form that says there's no more expenditures. So that's why you might see that the owner's rep has a project that's closed and we have a project that's still open. It's because we're waiting on those last dollar amounts to go out the door. So these are the 4 projects that we will close today. As I said, we have agenda items for them just to make it easier for everyone. The first one being the original Accenture contract. So we have a separate code for our current contract. So we'll go ahead and close that out. Your 2 sheriff salary and benefit projects. So those funds have already been moved into the general fund. And then Hope Transportation Services is the project we'll close as well. And something I know that we have been talking about is leaving projects open so that they can have funds roll back into them. for these 4 projects, the scope of work is completed. The Hope Transportation was a reimbursement for a vehicle for individuals with mobility restrictions. So that's already been purchased. It's already been taken care of. So that closes that scope of work. Of course, our contract and then the 2 sheriff payroll, salary and benefits, there's not going to be anything else that could roll back into those. So that's why those will be closed out rather than continue to sit open. We are going to talk about 3 projects that we are not closing out today, but we were getting really close to being ready to close out. And this is going to be a couple of your infrastructure projects. So the first one being HVAC at Midwest City. You have your detention center roof replacement and then your JJC roof replacement. So all of these have a PO that is still open and they have to have funds paid out. Those last invoices went out the door last week, so likely to be paid sometime this week or next. And so we should be able to then close them out. I know that there is going to be a request to move these funds to potentially elevators or other infrastructure projects. All of that will either have to occur next month when we're here, or we'll need to do a special meeting in order to roll these funds back first into 1415 for accounting principles, and then whether they stay in 1415 or they get allocated to elevators or other projects, we'll have to go through that process. But we will not close these yet. But I know this is something that Keith and others are watching as well, and Stacey are watching as well. That was a lot. I know it was fast. Are there any questions before we move into closing out some of these projects?
I did want to talk about go back to the ICB use of funds for those documents. So I think this is the only time we can discuss it. So that way we can make sure we can move forward with the ICB project. And so any further discussion about the use of the funds or have any other ideas of how we would pay for the removal of those documents so that way we can begin construction?
How many boxes of documents are there?
Keith left.
I just didn't know if anyone knew off the top.
Yeah, I think they got estimates. Estimates. We haven't gone out to bid. Is that correct? But got estimates around 100,000 is what. How many estimates did you get, Chantel? And here's Charles Dodson.
I just spoke to Chantel, but she was going to go back and check. She wasn't for sure, but I know that I believe that whenever the court clerk got them on his own, it was 100,000 was the one that he got. But she was throwing out figures of like 70 or 80,000. Does that resonate with you at all, Cody? Or do you know?
I was thinking they were all kind of in that $100,000 range.
Well, that's what I heard yesterday too.
Yeah,
so
and Chantel's shaking her head that
oh yeah,
$100,000 range.
is that right?
That is the highest. Okay.
I mean, I think the thing would be to these overages or that would get rolled back into is the 1415 account, is that correct? And then from there you would allocate them to whether it's the generator for the elevators, upgrades for the elevators at JVC, which we talked about, and also for change orders for the elevators too as well. I think this is like a one of the first dominoes needs to fall for ICB. So I think this would be right up there in priority with us grabbing that funding to go toward, if it's $100,000 or whatever it is.
Would it be more appropriate for Chantel to go through the bid process so that way we know the exact amount of the cost of the move and then revisit it in another policy and governance meeting?
The quotes we received are actually from vendors on state contracts.
Oh, okay.
They're already
So we could just
competitively
move
bid.
forward.
Yes, ma'am. We're just comparing the different state contracts available for the best price.
I think we do need to move on this pretty quick because we can't really do anything in ICB until we get there. I think we can have these kind of general discussions related to this, but I don't think we can take any action based on item 7. It's just talking about policies, processes, procedures, and status report. And I think the amount left over and what we're going to do kind of dovetails in there, but actually making a recommendation, I don't think we can do that on this agenda, but I think we could have a special meeting. That way we're not waiting a month or whatever to get back in here and talk about this particular item. I think we need to move on it pretty quick, but normally what we do is purchasing kind of spearheads that effort on getting the quotes and then getting a recommendation to us, and then ultimately getting a recommendation to BOCC. So, I mean, I think that between now and whenever we can call a special meeting, Chantel can maybe try to button that up and have a recommendation to us.
So yeah, it can just go straight
Could
from
it go
this
straight to
committee.
BOCC? If we just recommend for Chantel to find the best option? Or does it have to go to policy and governance?
It doesn't have to go to policy.
I mean,
and
we already,
governance.
I mean, I think we all agree that it's essential.
My deal is we can't take action today,
Okay.
whether it's to make a recommendation to BOC, to just have her send it to BOCC, or whether, you know, it comes back here or not. I don't think we have a sufficient agenda item to take specific action on that, but
Well, we'll call special. And then if Chantel, if you'll work in that meantime in regards to making that recommendation, so that way we can move forward and get those documents moved.
Yeah, we can add that to when we try and close out the infrastructure projects, we could do all of that in one special ideally. And include this language so that she can go forth and prosper.
Because I know just from email communications that I've had with Stacy that they're wanting it to go out to bid for contractors in October. Is that correct? Pretty quick. And so if we can be working towards removing those.
if we can get it, whether we have a special meeting or not, however that process works, if we can have a recommendation on for BOCC next week, it's just my personal opinion, that would be great. Whether we have a special policy and governance beforehand or not, but if we could have an agenda item on for BOCC next week, I think that would be really nice so we can get moving forward. And we discussed earlier, there's 1.9 million that's unallocated. We talked about 700,000. There's still 1.2 there. And even if we utilize $1 million for the elevator difference, we still have $200,000 there. So we don't have to rely on money that's brought back in from closing projects to have money to go ahead and move forward with this particular project.
And your closeout when we do the 3 infrastructure projects, it's going to bring more than 363,000 back, some change. But
Okay.
Yeah, just my understanding is they want to proceed with actually moving the report documents in 60 days was the plan. So yeah, urgency on.
Yeah.
So we'll get it on the agenda for next week and then try to pause, just so we're all clear, try to have a special P&G between now and then, or just go ahead and
If
move
you
it on
guys-
to
If you guys
BOCC.
want to have a special policy and governance, we can have that discussion, but I don't necessarily know that it's
Okay. I don't think it's
necessary. I mean,
necessary. Do you think it's
Chantel's going to
necessary?
make her recommendation,
Okay.
and that's what
So
I'm going to go
Chantel,
with, so.
we'll go with your recommendation, and if you could add it to to BOCC next week, we'd appreciate it. Okay. Let's see, what number are we on? Are we number?
I think
7?
just make sure and notate, Danny, that it is an ARPA eligible
yes,
expense.
absolutely. I already have a memo on it. So
I'll motion to receive report from item 7.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, number 8. Can we read it? Is discussion and possible action regarding project cancellation, reallocation, increase, or other intended use of $223,840 remaining to obligate of ARPA project 10035, the court clerk annex jury assembly room.
So as I mentioned earlier, we are not able to move forward with that project and the original intent of doing it in the alleyway because of just some construction concerns. So there was a consideration to move it into the jury assembly room instead and do like a partitioning wall, still within the same scope of work. So it was still an eligible use of funds. The new problem is really that the cost has really increased. So what was put towards that project was $250,000. The reason there's a little bit less is because part of that goes towards your owner's rep fee, which has already been been pulled down. So that's why you're seeing that amount rather than 250,000. But because of the increased costs needed for that project, you would either need to increase the funds on this project, or you have the option based off this agenda item to roll it back into 1415. I know that there is a preference from the clerk's department to reallocate these funds specifically to the fifth floor project. But that is a policy decision for you guys to make on what you want to do with this project, whether it's move forward with it, cancel it, roll it back, split the funds, share the funds, doesn't matter. But we do need to make a decision on the status of the project in general.
Well, I'm in favor of rolling it back to 1415.
Yeah, I think our office would also like to roll it back to 1415.
You want to make that motion?
Yeah, I'll motion to, I guess, cancel the project and roll back $223,840 to the 1415 account.
I'll second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, number 9 is discussion and possible action regarding formal project closeout of ARPA project 0001, ARPA consulting for the date of 3/22 through 6/23.
Move approval.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I'll also move approval on item 10.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move approval on 11 and 12.
I will second both of those.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Cool.
Colton, it's all
Yeah,
you.
so I know there's been discussion of creating record retention policy for the county. I kind of went down that rabbit hole trying to do it myself, and I was kind of overwhelmed. So I found this company on state contract called Iron Mountain. They usually do like data service, but they also do record retention schedules. So I got it passed. There's a memo you sent a couple weeks ago about how it's eligible use to free up public service, the backlog. So it's around $120,000 for everything. The implementation, they have lawyers on staff that like do research for us. Yeah, so.
I remember from previous conversations, Lisa was also very happy with with hiring a consultant to help us with working with all the different offices and elected officials. And, and it is something that we are statutorily required to have that we currently do not have in place. And just from also working with Colton and Cody and Joe in regards to the need for this, and just working with Jim Anderson with the Sheriff's Department and IT that have been very instrumental. Everyone has just really kind of some different needs, and so having a consultant really understand and figure out the legality of what that looks like, and come up with a comprehensive retention schedule and policy and procedure that we could accept at VOCC as the county as a whole would be amazing. So I appreciate your efforts and vetting qualified candidates for this.
Quick question. I think there were some options or something with this group. There's some different
Yeah,
levels.
so the option 1, option 2. I kind of just went ahead and did everything.
Okay, that's because I remembered seeing that, and I wanted to
Yes.
make sure that this was for the whole kit and
So
caboodle.
option 1, which has everything, including like a 3-year subscription of the research center, and they'll have training in there involved as well. And then there's a records and information management policy to help create for us.
So this is for the whole thing.
The whole thing, the whole shebang.
I appreciate you working on this. This is something that
We've been
has
done since the 60s. That's when this
Yeah.
statute was passed.
Yep.
So
yeah. So I really appreciate you working on this, and am excited to get this moving forward. So would you like to make the motion?
I'll move approval.
I will
Item 13.
happily second.
Perfect.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Yay, Colton. Okay, do we have any citizen participation? Seeing none? Any board comments?
None for me.
None for me. Any new business? Seeing none?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.